One recent day, surprising news appeared on social media platforms. It was a big announcement from the American president. This announcement was about the relationship and trade between the United States and another large country in South America, Brazil. The president said that the United States would put a very high tax on everything that is imported from Brazil. This special tax is called a tariff. The president announced that this tariff would be 50%, which means half of the price of the goods coming into the United States from Brazil. This number is very high. Taxes like this are usually much lower, often only a few percent. Putting such a large tax on all goods from an entire country was a very sudden and unexpected decision by the president. This announcement caused great surprise and worry around the world. People in both the United States and Brazil, especially those involved in business and trade, were shocked by the news. They did not expect such a large tariff to be announced so suddenly and for all Brazilian products. This unexpected move by the American president immediately created a big international problem. The United States and Brazil trade a lot with each other, and this high tax put all that important business at risk. It was not just a small issue that could be easily solved. It quickly started a serious crisis in the relationship between the two countries. This surprise 50% tariff became the main topic everywhere and created a very difficult situation for everyone involved. This marked the beginning of a challenging time for these two important nations and their economies. 2. The big news. The big news from President Trump came with many more details. He wrote an official letter to Brazil's president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. President Trump posted this important letter online for everyone around the world to read. In the letter, President Trump explained the main reason for the new and very high 50% tariff on goods from Brazil. He said Brazil was treating its former leader, Jair Bolsonaro, very unfairly. President Trump wrote that he knew Mr. Bolsonaro well and respected him greatly as a political friend. He said Mr. Bolsonaro was his ally. President Trump was very angry about the legal case happening against Mr. Bolsonaro in Brazil. He called this case a witch hunt. He said it was a bad attack on fair processes and free speech rights in Brazil. President Trump was very clear in his letter about what he demanded. He wrote that Brazil must stop the legal case against Mr. Bolsonaro immediately. He said Brazil should drop the charges or make the case much less serious right away. President Trump stated directly in the letter that this problem with Mr. Bolsonaro's legal case was the main political reason for the large 50% tariff on all goods from Brazil. This was a huge change from before. Earlier, President Trump had put a smaller 10% tariff on only some goods from Brazil. But now the rate was much higher, 50%, and it included everything Brazil sent to the United States. The letter clearly linked the high tax on goods to the situation of Mr. Bolsonaro. The letter also included a strong warning for Brazil's government. President Trump said that if Brazil decided to put its own taxes on American goods as a response, it would not change his decision. He said the 50% tariff from the U.S. would still happen on August 1. He also mentioned starting a new official investigation into Brazil's trade rules, especially rules about digital business. This long letter explained President Trump's thinking. It showed that the big tariff was deeply connected to politics and the legal problems of former President Bolsonaro, and that this was the core reason behind the sudden big news. 3. Brazil fights back. Brazil's president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, heard the news from the United States. He knew Brazil must react quickly and strongly. President Lula called an important meeting immediately. His vice president and the ministers who manage Brazil's money and safety came together to talk. They discussed the new high tariff and planned Brazil's response. Later, President Lula spoke to the country in public. He did not hide his feelings. He said the action from the United States was wrong and unfair. He called it an attack on Brazil's independence and its right to make its own choices. He pointed out that the U.S. actually sells more goods to Brazil than it buys from Brazil. This made the U.S. reason for the tariff seem not true. He stressed that Brazil had to protect its economy and its rights. Lula announced how Brazil would fight back. Brazil has a law called the Economic Reciprocity Law. This important law was passed in the year 2025. It was created to help Brazil stand strong against unfair rules from other countries. It gives Brazil tools to respond when its products are harmed without a good reason. President Lula said Brazil would use this law now to answer the U.S. tariff. He made a very clear promise about Brazil's action. He said, "If they are going to charge us 50%, we will charge them 50%. This meant Brazil was ready to put the same high tax on goods coming from the United States. Many other important leaders in Brazil agreed with President Lula. The head of Brazil's Senate and the head of the Chamber of Deputies spoke together. These leaders are sometimes against Lula's political ideas, but they stood with him on this. They said the reciprocity law gives Brazil the power it needs to defend itself. They saw this law as a key way to make sure other countries respected Brazil's borders and its economic rights. They noted that Brazil had different ways to respond, not just matching tariffs. Brazil could also stop some trade or block money investments from the U.S. if needed. Brazil's officials also took diplomatic steps. They asked representatives from the United States Embassy to come to their office. They wanted to officially protest the U.S. tariff and the reasons given for it. This action showed the United States that Brazil was determined to respond. Many leaders across Brazil from different political groups stood together against the U.S. decision. They were united to defend Brazil's independence and its economy. Brazil was ready to fight back. 4. Two sides in Brazil. Former President Jair Bolsonaro was in the hospital when he heard the news about the big tariff from the United States. He sent a public message soon after. Bolsonaro thanked the American president for his action. He said that the tariff showed a sense of responsibility from the U.S. leader. Bolsonaro also said that something like this would never happen when he was president of Brazil. He felt this action was a form of support for him. Many people in Brazil who support Bolsonaro were also very happy about the news. They saw the American president's move as help for their former leader. They felt it was a strong action related to the legal case Bolsonaro was facing in Brazil. His son also publicly thanked the American president and asked other supporters to do the same. They felt the U.S. president was right to call the legal case against Bolsonaro unfair. However, important groups in Brazil felt very differently. Leaders of Brazilian businesses were very concerned. These are the people who manage large companies that sell products to the United States. They understood that a 50% tax on everything they sell to the U.S. market would make their products much more expensive for American buyers. This could stop trade and hurt many companies and jobs in Brazil. So, these business leaders spoke out. They asked the governments of Brazil and the United States to talk calmly. They wanted negotiations to find a solution. They made it clear they did not want a trade war between the two countries. They believed that putting politics and personal feelings first would hurt the economies of both nations. They asked for a focus on sensible trade relations. The news media across Brazil was also very angry. Many newspapers, TV channels, and online news sites strongly criticized the U.S. president's decision. Editorials and reports called the tariff unfair and without good reason. They pointed out that it did not seem based on economics. Many in the media saw the action as direct interference by the United States in Brazil's own internal affairs. Some writers used strong words. They argued that Brazil must protect its right to make its own decisions without pressure from other countries. This showed a strong reaction across different parts of Brazilian society. 5. What is at risk? Brazil sells many important things to the United States. This trade is very big. In 2024, Brazil sold goods worth billions of dollars to the U.S. These goods include natural resources like oil. Brazil also sells manufactured things like airplanes to the U.S. Meat is another key product Brazil sends to American tables. Beyond these, the U.S. buys much of its daily food items from Brazil. Coffee is a perfect example. Brazil supplies about 1/3 of all coffee that Americans drink. Orange juice is another. Brazil provides about 42% of the orange juice in the U.S. This flow of goods shows how connected the two countries' economies are. The new 50% tariff is a big problem for this trade. A tariff is like an extra tax on goods from another country. 50% is a very high tax. It makes goods from Brazil much more expensive for people and businesses in the U.S. If things cost too much, U.S. buyers will stop buying them. This could mean Brazil cannot sell its oil, airplanes, or meat to the U.S. anymore. Coffee and orange juice from Brazil could become too costly for U.S. supermarkets and homes. This puts the whole trade relationship at great risk. For Brazil, losing the U.S. market is a very serious matter. The U.S. is a major customer. Losing this customer will hurt many Brazilian businesses and workers. People might lose jobs. Companies might earn much less money or even close. The risk is not just for the big products, but also for smaller ones. Farmers growing coffee or oranges in Brazil depend on selling to the U.S. The 50% tax makes their products too expensive for American buyers. This is a big worry for them. Companies that move goods across the ocean, like shipping lines, also face problems. If there is less trade, they will have less business. So, the risk touches many different parts of the economy. For the United States, the risk is different. The U.S. buys important products from Brazil, but it also sells a lot to Brazil. Actually, in 2024, the U.S. sold more goods to Brazil than Brazil sold to the U.S. This means the U.S. has a trade surplus with Brazil. A trade surplus means selling more than buying. Usually, tariffs are put on when a country buys much more than it sells, a trade deficit. So, the reason for the U.S. tariff is not because the U.S. is losing money on trade with Brazil overall. This makes the reason for the tariff seem not economic, but something else. The real risk is stopping the flow of billions of dollars of trade. It is breaking important business connections. It is making life harder for companies that rely on this trade. After the tariff news, Brazil's money became weaker compared to the U.S. dollar. The stock market in Brazil also dropped. This shows how worried investors are about the economic future because of the tariff risk. The situation is putting a big and important trade relationship in danger. It is a risk for companies, workers, and even shoppers in both countries. The question is how much damage this high tariff will cause if it starts. 6. A problem for shoppers. The big tax on goods from Brazil is called a tariff. It is 50% on everything. This new tariff means many products from Brazil will cost more money in the United States. This is a problem for American shoppers. Many things people buy in supermarkets come from Brazil. For example, a lot of coffee that Americans drink comes from Brazil. Also, a large amount of orange juice in the U.S. is from Brazil. Beef is another product. The United States buys a lot of beef from Brazil. With the 50% tariff, the companies that bring these products to the U.S. have to pay a lot more money. They will likely ask for higher prices from stores. Then, stores will ask for higher prices from shoppers. So, coffee, orange juice, and beef could become more expensive in your local supermarket. This makes shopping harder for families. Experts who watch the economy are worried about this. They say these higher prices could help cause inflation. Inflation is when the price of many goods and services goes up. Your money buys less than before. For companies in the U.S. that need products from Brazil, this is also a problem. Coffee companies might look for coffee beans from other countries, like Vietnam or Colombia. Meat companies might find it too expensive to buy Brazilian beef. This is bad for Brazilian companies. If U.S. buyers go to other countries, Brazilian companies lose business. For example, Brazilian orange juice makers sent almost half of their juice to the U.S. last year. A 50% tax is very hard for them. Brazil's economy reacted quickly to the news of the tariff. Brazil's money, the real, lost value compared to the U.S. dollar. The stock market in Brazil also went down. This shows that businesses and people who invest money are worried. Some U.S. businesses might benefit. For example, farmers in the U.S. who produce similar things might sell more. Also, companies from other countries, like Australia or New Zealand, might sell more beef to the U.S. if less comes from Brazil. But for most American shoppers and many businesses, the tariff means higher costs. It shows how a decision about trade between two countries can directly affect the price of food and drinks that people buy every day. The tariff is planned to start soon, on August 1st. So people will likely see changes in prices soon. It makes the cost of some common items less sure. This trade problem is not just about big numbers. It is also a problem for shoppers trying to buy groceries. 7. More than money. This big problem with trade between the U.S. and Brazil is not really about money. Some people say it is not about trade numbers or who sells more goods. The U.S. actually sells more to Brazil than it buys. So putting a high tax on Brazilian goods does not seem like a simple trade action. Many experts say the reason for this action is political. It is about helping a friend. The U.S. president has shown support for the former president of Brazil. There is a legal situation happening with the former president in Brazil, and the U.S. action is linked to this. Some people think the U.S. used the trade rule, the tariff, to try and change things in Brazil's internal legal system. This is seen by many as unusual. Using trade rules to get involved in another country's internal matters is not common. It is like trying to influence another country's decisions with money problems. However, this plan might not work the way the U.S. president wants. Instead of helping the former president, some people believe it could make the current president stronger. When the U.S. puts pressure on Brazil like this, many Brazilians feel their country's independence is attacked. This can make people come together. In Brazil, many people were unhappy with the U.S. action. They saw it as outside pressure. People in Brazil protested in cities. They showed support for Brazil's own laws and for their president. This reaction shows that the U.S. action might unite Brazilians and give more popular support to their current leader. Other countries around the world are watching this situation closely. They are worried. They see the U.S. using trade in a new way, not just for trade problems, but for political reasons. Countries in Europe and Asia have shown concern. The U.S. also recently put tariffs on goods from several other big countries. This makes the world think that the U.S. is using trade as a political tool more and more. This adds to worries about world trade and how countries act towards each other. 8. What happens next? The 1st of August is coming soon. This is an important date for Brazil and the United States. The two countries must decide what happens next. There are two main paths they can follow. One path is to talk. They can try to find a way to stop the new high tax. This means finding a solution together. Business leaders and some officials are trying to help with talks. They hope to avoid a trade war. The other path is a trade war. If they do not talk or cannot agree, the tax will start on August 1. Brazil has said it will put its own high taxes on goods from the United States. This could make the problem bigger. Both sides are getting ready for this. Businesses are looking for new places to buy things or are buying more now. The relationship between the two countries is difficult now. It is very tense. A trade war would make it worse. This situation makes the future unclear for both Brazil and the United States. Their economies could have problems. Prices for some goods could go up for shoppers. Businesses might lose money. The world is watching to see what happens. Will the two countries find a way to agree? Or will the tax start and lead to a fight over trade? The answer is not clear yet. Do you think the two countries will start a trade war? Or will they find a solution before the deadline?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.